and welcome to our celebration of Tampa's 138th birthday, which is part of our annual Archives Awareness Week. This brochure has a schedule for the week, which includes exhibits and a total of 14 programs with our Archives Awareness Week partners. Before we begin, we would like to recognize all current and former elected officials who are in attendance. Is there someone else here aside from Charlie?
Well, I guess I can be former and present.
Thank you. Thank you. If there is anyone else, please stand and be recognized. And Charlie, thank you for your service. Really appreciate it. We're going to get started today with a special presentation recognizing Frances Henriquez, who was the first woman as well as the first Hispanic elected as Tampa City Clerk. She passed away on March 19th of this year at the age of 94 and left behind a remarkable legacy. Her influence continues today in the City Clerk's office and our Archives and Records Division. I would like to share part of the oral history that I recorded with Frances so that you can hear it in her own words. City Clerk for the City of Tampa, and this is Tampa's Oral Histories. Tampa's Oral Histories is a production of the City Clerk's office and City of Tampa Television. Today we have the oral history of Frances Henriquez, another trailblazer and the first woman to become City Clerk for the City of Tampa. She is also the 2014 recipient of the Josephine Howard Stafford Award. Mrs. Henriquez has many memories of Tampa and much to tell about her time as City Clerk. Without further ado, let's hear from Frances Henriquez.
It was a very simple life. I can remember milk. It used to be delivered, the milkman, we had a milkman, and he used to come and bring the milk and leave it on the front porch in this little container. And that's how we got our milk. Of course, I would go and get the cream that would foam on top and drink that down before anybody else did. I think that used to make my mother kind of mad. And the streetcars. I remember riding streetcars and going to Franklin Street in a streetcar. And that was a big deal in my life at that time, being able to take a streetcar ride. Well, I started off at VME Bohr, the first grade there. My grandfather used to take me to school. No, he didn't take me to school. He dragged me to school. I would cry all the way there, and then I went to Washington. And then I went to Jefferson, and that's where I met my husband. Yeah. And I saw him go across the field there, and I said, "Who is that boy there?" And he said, "Oh, that's Wallace." I said, "I'm going to marry him." And by golly, I did marry him. So that was that's where I didn't get to go to college, because right after I graduated, June the 17th. 1949. I got married June the 19th, 1949, right after I graduated. Well, let me tell you, it was at Ybor City. My father worked for Mr. Buckman. He owned a retail store there. So my father told me, come see Mr. Buckman. because during Christmas he needs somebody to wrap up gifts. So I said, fine, I would love doing that. So he gave me the job, and the store it was 2 stories, and we would do the gift wrapping up on the 2nd floor. And I would just embellish. I'd put these ribbons and this holly and all, and he'd come up to me, Frances, you're putting too much ribbon. Remember, it's free. People don't have to pay, not so much ribbon. So I said, okay, so I wouldn't. But when he was out, they would tell me, Frances, he's gone. I'd start with the ribbons, and then when he'd come back in, he's here. I'd go back to just one bow. Dick Greco, he brought me into the office because my boss, Bill Stark, was retiring. Okay. And at that time, the position was an appointed one. So I went in there and sat down, and he said, Frances, I want you to run for city clerk. And I looked at him and was thinking to myself, this man's gone crazy. Me run for city clerk, a girl? I've never made a speech in my life. And he said, no, he said, you'll have the support, you'll have my support. He says, and it's about time that a woman got to be city clerk. We need women in office. So he was, yeah, he championed women in office. So I ran for city clerk, and there was, I think 3 men running against me. And I tell you, that was an experience that I think everybody should go through. And if they would go through it, they would be more, they wouldn't be as opinionated as about the people that run for office. They would be more loving and caring about running for office, because it's a job that, it's hard running for office. I guess what I enjoyed the most was when I first got there. Tampa was a small town, more or less. And I was in the middle of it becoming a city. And when I left, it was a city. The mayors and the city council did a fantastic job. Just imagine, when I was there, the airport came in, the Performing Arts Center, the riverfront, the teams, the sports teams, and it was bustling, and I was right in the middle of it. Just sitting there, just looking and taking it all in. Curtis Hickson, yeah. And they asked me, one of the, Mr. Guidry, the deputy clerk, Frances, you want to meet a mayor? I says, yes, but am I dressed okay? And he says, he starts laughing. He says, yeah, come on, come on. So I walked to, which is where your office is now, that was the mayor's office. And I walked into his office, and it was a huge room, and it was kind of dark, and there was this humongous desk there. Oh, and there was this little voice in the back of the desk, and he said, Frances, I hear you're working for the city clerk's office now. And I said, yes, Mayor. So we had a little chit-chat there, and then of course he got busy, so we left. And Mr. Getty said, well, what do you think? I said, well, I heard him, but it was kind of dark. And, you know, I always thought that gentleman stood up when a lady walked in the room. And he looked at me and he said, he was standing, Frances, he's just sort of short. I would have liked to have taken a picture of the first mayor I ever met and every mayor that followed him, and I don't have it. But if I had to do it over again, every time they were sworn in, I would be right by them, sticking my head in there, sitting by them, having a picture taken with them, and with council also. Get an agenda, go to council meetings, but keep your agenda positive. Keep your running for office positive. Nowadays, you see a candidate, instead of talking about what he's going to do for Tampa, what his goals are, they start attacking their opposition. And that's all you learn of what the bad things about the opposition. And what's really sad about that is that sometimes they get elected. And that's not good. Just get out there and say what you're going to, say who you are and what you stand for and what you're going to do for Tampa.
This is how to get in shape fast.
Again, happy birthday, Tampa. Yes, indeed. Frances was a wonderful person. You couldn't beat her. Couldn't hit her with a stick. She was a class all her own, and I just loved her. Really did. Just loved her. I am grateful to the first woman and the first Hispanic woman who left a legacy, Mrs. Frances Henriquez. She was the first woman city clerk for the city of Tampa. She has truly been a friend to me and everyone in the city clerk's office, including our Archives and Records Division. I appreciate her guidance and the love she has shown over the years. Frances wanted me and the entire city clerk's office to succeed, and I am eternally grateful. I know that I have a lot to live up to. Frances continued to stay in touch with us. She always remembered us during the holidays. In 2014, Frances was the recipient of the Memorial Josephine Howard Stafford Award. She was a woman of character, courage, and commitment. She was also fun-loving and made friends easily. Ask her daughter-in-law. My inspiration comes from women like Frances, who always showed examples of committed service, personal achievement, and humility. Her hard work and professional diligence paved the way for the female city clerks, including me. I encourage all to increase their awareness about the importance of contributing, and not only to the city of Tampa's history, but American history. The Office of the City Clerk honors Frances' invaluable contribution and will remember the pavers Frances left for us to follow. She earned the respect and admiration of many, and that's my inspiration. Frances joined the city of Tampa many years ago in 1954 in a clerical job. She became deputy city clerk in 1962 and served in that position for 11 years. In 1973, when city clerk William Stark resigned, Mayor Dick Greco appointed her acting city clerk until an election could be held. Back then they had elections for the city clerk. Frances served as city clerk from November 1973 to September 1993. I want to say that during her tenure, she initiated a records management program and the city of Tampa became the first city in Florida to create a municipal archive. That's a lady. She thought outside of the box. In 1993, the Archives and Records Services building was dedicated in her honor. One of her first priorities was to microfilm the older records at the city clerk's office. She also worked on preserving Tampa's history by interviewing elected officials with the City of Tampa television station, and served as city clerk for nearly 20 years until her retirement in 1993. Frances loved the city of Tampa and her co-workers. She will never be forgotten, and what a lifetime. Also, Frances dearly, dearly loved her beautiful family. And thank you very much for sharing her with us. We will always remember Frances. What a lifetime. Okay. Lifetime by Robert F. Lowry. Time moves along as must it will to make us grow, day older still. Today is here, yesterday gone. What's left behind doth linger on. Time moves along and yesterday's dead. A new day dawns to move ahead. Mistakes were made, and this is sure, to make amends, endure, or cure. Time moves along, no backward glance, with time to come, not left to chance, to fill the dreams that need to be filled, to till the ground that needs to be tilled. Time moves along, to use or waste, the choice to make to suit each taste. Time to enjoy, to others say, now is the time to live today. Time moves along to gray in hair, to aches and pains and needed care. Time moves along so very fast that most of the time of life is past. Let not sorrow be our lot, to live today as best we got. Let not regret or what's been done to spoil what's left of time to come. What a lifetime, Frances. What a lifetime. And thanks for everything you've done. And now, Fred Hearns could not make it, but we have a great replacement. Rodney Kite Powell, director of the Touchton Map Library at the Tampa Bay History Center. Yes, indeed. Thank you so much.
Thank you. You did a wonderful job.
Thank you.
She'll just put this right here, and then to move it, you just.
All right. It was fantastic hearing your words about Ms. Hernandez, Ms. Henriquez. I'd never had a chance to meet her. I didn't start my history career till 1995, so she was already gone. But I do know that old records building, and I saw a picture of Clara Cardina in the brochure, and that was one of the first places where I started doing research. And so it's certainly 30 years on. Her legacy certainly does live on. So it was wonderful that you could share that, and wonderful that her family could be here to hear those wonderful words. So again, my name is Rodney Kite Powell, and I am here in place of Fred Hearns, who regretfully can't be here, but he asked if I could fill in for him, and I'm going to do my best to do so. And the topic for today, as y'all can see, is Tampa 1925. So looking at Tampa 100 years ago. It's kind of an ongoing theme when we do these Archives Awareness Weeks. And so I'm going to start off with some things that Fred actually, I think, is going to have for a program later this week, and that is celebrating the 100th anniversary of Booker T. Washington School. And so the first few slides are Fred's, and so I'm going to cover those. Booker T. Washington, for those of you who may be a little fuzzy about kind of early American history, early 20th century history, was a world-renowned educator and advocate for blacks in the U.S. and really advocate for education. And so he founded what is now Tuskegee University, but he also traveled the country lecturing on the importance of education, including coming here to Tampa in 1912. He actually spoke at the casino at the Tampa Bay Hotel, now the University of Tampa. So a very fitting place for him to speak at what is now a university. There were several black schools that started in Tampa before Booker T. Washington, and actually Mauro here in the front row could probably tell you far more about the early black schools because she's been doing an incredible amount of research on them. But Booker T. Washington is one of the most important schools and still a legacy that goes on today, 100 years on. And so Fred is going to do a whole program at Tampa's Black History Museum at St. James Church on Wednesday about the school. So I would definitely encourage you all to go to that. Now locally, we had our own incredible advocates for education. Christina Meacham is one, and then Blanche Armwood Beatty is another, and that's who you see on your screen there. In 1925, Blanche Armwood became the superintendent for what they called Negro schools in Hillsborough County. And it was likely her decision, or among her and others' decision, to actually create the Booker T. Washington School. Blanche Armwood herself has an incredible history. She went to the Harlem Academy. She graduated from there at the age of 12 or 13, went on to Spelman, graduated from there at the age of 15, and came back to Tampa and became a teacher at the age of 15. Then she continued in education. She actually worked for Tampa Electric Company to help train women who worked, African-American women who worked in white folks' homes to use these new electrical appliances that were coming about. Then she actually went on to law school, and she graduated with her law degree, but unfortunately died before she could begin her practice. But she was an incredible force for education and for the beginnings of civil rights here in Tampa, and Armwood High School out in Seffner, which is where the Armwood family had their original homestead in the 1800s. It's named, of course, in her honor. This is a view of the original Booker T. Washington School. This building still exists within the overall campus of Booker T. Washington, which is just off of Nebraska Avenue on the kind of edge of Ybor City. Its location is really interesting in that it's right at the edge of what was historically called the Scrub in Central Avenue area, which was one of the oldest black neighborhoods in Tampa, but also kind of in the edge of Ybor City, and particularly the Afro-Cuban section of Ybor City. It's only a couple blocks away from the original site of the Martín Maceo Club, the Afro-Cuban Club. So its location was really important in a really important part of Tampa. And so in the 1920s, there was an incredible amount of growth that was happening in Tampa among all the neighborhoods, within all the neighborhoods, among all the different ethnicities that were here. And there was a lot of money that was actually put into school infrastructure. And interestingly, a lot of the schools that were designated for blacks, of course, this isn't a time of segregation, were constructed, as far as we can tell, and actually, and I've done a lot of research, constructed as well with the similar materials as you would see white schools being made. And you can see right here, it's a brick school, big windows, of course, no air conditioning at the time, but lots of windows to allow lots of air movement. and really a substantial amount of money that was put towards this school. And this is definitely in contrast to schools that would have been built in the decades prior to that. The few black schools that were built were mostly built of wood. Lomax may be an exception, but there were a lot of other schools like the Dobie School and other schools were just basically like wood frame houses where you had a lot of money put into places like what is now Gorey and others that are these big brick buildings. But the Booker T. Washington School, you can see they put a lot of money into it. And it was a fairly decent-sized school for its time. Now, of course, it's hard to even see within the overall campus because it has grown so much over time. Just pointing out some of the important faculty. Howard W. Blake, the namesake of Blake High School. There you go, Ashley. Is it was the principal at Booker T. Washington. You see some other of the folks who were there as well, and proud Blake alum right here in the front row again. I know. And then another educator at Booker T. Washington played another important role in the civil rights movement. Hilda Turner was part of a lawsuit where teachers were suing for equal pay among black and white educators. And none other than Thurgood Marshall was the attorney for this case at the Supreme Court before he was a member of the Supreme Court. And their push for equal pay was ultimately successful. But it was people like Hilda Turner who really put their jobs and to some degree their lives on the line for that level of pushing for equality. And again, that push happened right from within Booker T. Washington. Now, other events that occurred in 1925 in Tampa. Again, this is during the land boom, lots of growth going on, but there also was some growth that happened through annexation. So the city can grow physically if it kind of gloms onto other pieces of land. Oftentimes, this is done in neighborhoods that are in unincorporated areas. That happened in the 1950s with what we know as South Tampa. But sometimes it happens to actual other cities. And for the first time, as far as I know, that the city of Tampa, actually, second time, we did it to Fort Brooke in 1907. So the second time, in 1925, the city of Tampa actually took over the city of West Tampa. So everything on the west side of the Hillsborough River, actually west side of Boulevard, was a city of West Tampa. And it went just to almost to McDill. It was its own separate city. And in the 1920s, before annexation, it was the 7th largest city in the whole state. So it was a pretty good-sized city all on its own. Tampa was the 3rd largest city by population at this time. But the city leaders of Tampa wanted to have the tax money and everything that was part of the industry of West Tampa. West Tampa was basically like Ybor City. It was founded for the cigar industry. But unlike Ybor City, which was never its separate place, a separate city, West Tampa was. It had its own mayor and fire and police protection, all that stuff. But the city of Tampa took it over in January of 1925 and made it part of the city. Because of that annexation and other annexations going into Sulphur Springs, the city of Tampa was probably sometime during this decade, maybe even in 1925, very briefly the largest city in Florida. Miami's growth and Jacksonville's physical growth soon kind of put Tampa back at 3rd place. But there was a time in the 20s, again, probably right around this time of the annexation of West Tampa, that Tampa was the largest city in the state. And if you're curious, this is Howard Avenue looking north, just north of Main Street, right at Chestnut. And the two buildings that you see primarily there in the center are still there, believe it or not. There's still quite a bit of historic fabric left in West Tampa, which is nice. Other parts of Tampa that weren't in Tampa at the time were also growing. Again, I mentioned South Tampa. It wasn't part of the city of Tampa until the 1950s. Believe it or not, Howard Avenue was the dividing line between the city of Tampa, the incorporated area, and then the unincorporated part of Hillsborough County. So basically all of the Inner Bay Peninsula, all of what we know as South Tampa, except for Port Tampa City, which was its own city, was outside of the city limits. So places like Beach Park and Belmar and others were all outside of Tampa, but their growth obviously contributed to the overall growth of Tampa, because even though folks might have lived in Beach Park, they would have likely worked in Tampa. So all these 1920s developments, which were so popular and made so much money, kind of came about during the land boom, but they also kind of failed toward the end of the land boom. 1925 was really the peak of the land boom. People were coming here from all over the country, mostly the Northeast and the Midwest, but really from everywhere, trying to buy a little piece of Florida paradise. And not only are they trying to buy that piece of paradise, they're then trying to resell it to somebody else for a profit. And that was part of the problem that eventually led to the collapse of the land boom in the 1920s, the late 20s, like 1927 or so. Another neighborhood that got its start, which was in the city limits, was Davis Islands. And this is what Davis Islands looked like in 1925. It wasn't even finished yet. They were still literally building the islands, particularly on the south side, as they were constructing buildings, homes and businesses on the north side. And if you look at Davis Islands today, and of course the hurricanes didn't do us any favors last late summer, but the oldest buildings on the island are on the north end. And the streets kind of have an roughly alphabetical order to them. So that the streets that begin with A, B, and C are on the northern edge of the island. And that's where you find the oldest houses. There today are probably about 90 original buildings left on the island, of about 130 or 140 that were built in the 1920s. It was also in 1925 that the city released the bonds that were going to go to pay for Tampa, what is now Tampa General Hospital, what was then Tampa Municipal Hospital, which was built in the northern tip of Davis Island. And you got to wonder, who thought it was a good idea to put a hospital on an island that's about 8 feet above sea level, particularly when just 4 years earlier, the islands that were there were underwater because we had our last big hurricane strike until last year, of course. The 1921 hurricane brought about 10 feet of storm surge, and there were 2 little islands that were in the bay that D.P. Davis connected to create Davis Islands, and both of those were totally submerged during the 1921 hurricane. But no bother, 4 years later, let's build a hospital. And of course, they did, and they opened it 2 years later in 1927. If you look kind of in detail, you can see there's actually some homes that are already built on the north end of the island, as well as some apartment buildings that were under construction. The island itself wasn't really finished out until 1929, after D.P. Davis went broke, and a company called Stone & Webster purchased the island and continued its progress. Because you can imagine the embarrassment and really difficulty if a real estate development like that went unfinished right at the doorstep of downtown Tampa. So it was really important for the city's pride to at least finish the infrastructure for the project. And just like Davis Islands and Beach Park and like a lot of other places, even though they started in the 20s, they really weren't built out to the 1950s, after World War II, and that next big land boom of people coming into Florida, coming into Tampa to settle. And then last but not least, talk about a different city, the city of Temple Terrace. This year is its 100th birthday, and so there are 3 incorporated cities in Hillsborough County today. There's, of course, the city of Tampa, which is celebrating its 138th birthday. I put an asterisk by that because we're actually celebrating our 170th birthday from our first incorporation in 1855. But the current incorporation is 1887, so that's the one we celebrate. And so 138 years old tomorrow is the city of Tampa. 100 years old just a month or so ago was Temple Terrace. And then Plant City, believe it or not, has us beat. Plant City was formed in 1886, and so it's the older of the 3 cities, if you include our new incorporation. But Temple Terrace, originally plural, Temple Terraces, was, as you see, Tampa's Orange Grove suburb deluxe. The idea was you could buy a home plot in the town of Temple Terrace, but then you also would buy a 5-acre plot of orange groves. And either you could work your own groves or have somebody else work the groves. And the hope was that the acreage, your orange acreage, would pay for your mortgage by selling the oranges that you're growing. It didn't really work, but it was a good idea. But you can see just how vast the orange groves were. That's just one picture of the groves. I mean, it was just acres and acres and acres, probably just miles of oranges, and all Temple oranges, which is a particular kind of orange. Just like Davis Islands and Beach Park, the architecture of Temple Terrace was that kind of Mediterranean revival, Spanish, Italian look, and a lot of their buildings are still standing today as well. Although, unfortunately, they are seeing some demolition, particularly the commercial buildings that were some of the original ones, but a lot of the homes are still around today. So with that, I thank you all so very much, and I encourage you to take this brochure, wherever they are, and go to all the other great Archives Awareness Week things we have going on this week all around the city. So thank you all so very much.